The night sky over Rostov was suddenly consumed by flames as the only functioning oil refinery in the region exploded into chaos. A towering inferno, visible from miles away, and accompanied by deafening blasts that shattered the illusion of safety. Within hours, Moscow rushed to assure its citizens, declaring that dozens of Ukrainian drones had been intercepted, and every threat had been neutralized. Yet the burning reality could not be hidden, because if all drones were destroyed, how could such a critical facility have turned into a sea of fire? This contradiction is more than a technicality, it is a window into the truth of this war, exposing the fragile line between Russia's propaganda and the battlefield reality. The refinery at Novo Shakhtinsk is not just another industrial plant, it is the very gas station of Russia's southern front, the lifeline fueling tanks, supply convoys and the generators that keep command posts alive. Its destruction, even partial, means more than orange flames rising against the night sky. It means stretched supply lines, disrupted operations, and the collapse of confidence in Russia's ability to shield its own strategic assets. Ukraine did not strike randomly. This is the result of a calculated pattern repeated for months, probing defenses, mapping weaknesses, and then hitting at the one point that matters most. For the average Russian citizen, the result is immediate as fuel prices climb to historic levels and long lines of trucks sit stranded on highways waiting for fuel that may never come. For the Kremlin, the result is devastating as each burning facility reveals to the world that its expensive air defense systems cannot stop a determined opponent armed with ingenuity and drones guided by artificial intelligence. And for Ukraine, the message is clear and deliberate. We can reach you wherever you are. We can choke your supply lines, and we can make your war machine bleed from within. Tonight's explosion is not the end of the story. It is only the beginning of a larger campaign that aims to weaken Russia not by sheer force but by striking the vital arteries that keep its war alive. What unfolded after the refinery burst into flames reveals the deeper layers of this conflict, because while Russian officials confidently claimed that their defenses had neutralized every incoming threat, the smoldering ruins told another story, a story of a military machine struggling to protect its own lifelines. Ukraine has understood something that many observers in the West overlooked. Wars are not only decided by battles between tanks and artillery, but by the quiet destruction of logistics, the silent choke of fuel lines, the calculated targeting of energy hubs. The Novo Shakhtinsk refinery represents the embodiment of this strategy, standing just under 200 kilometers from the Donbass front line, and serving as the primary source of refined fuel for the southern front. Every Russian armored column that rolls across Ukrainian soil, and every communication system that needs power in the occupied territories, depends on this single point of supply. By turning it into a target of repeated assaults, Ukraine is sending both a tactical and psychological message. Tactically, each successful strike stretches Russian logistics, forcing convoys to travel farther, consuming precious time and resources, and creating vulnerabilities along new supply routes. Psychologically, it erodes the illusion of security, because if the Russian state cannot defend a refinery within its own territory, how can it convince its citizens or its soldiers that victory is possible? This contradiction between official announcements and observable reality becomes even sharper in the information era, where every explosion is captured by ordinary people on their phones, and every plume of smoke is verified by satellite data shared openly online. Moscow can declare that all drones were destroyed, yet within hours, videos appear on Telegram showing flames rising into the night sky, and NASA's fire information system pinpoints thermal anomalies exactly at the refinery's coordinates. In past wars, governments controlled the narrative, but today the war is live-streamed and fact-checked in real time by citizens and independent analysts. For Ukraine, this informational edge is almost as powerful as the drone strikes themselves because it turns every Russian denial into another proof of weakness. Each mismatch between the Kremlin's words and the world's eyes chips away at Russia's credibility not only abroad but at home, where citizens queuing for fuel cannot reconcile official boasts with the empty tanks of their cars. This is where strategy transcends the battlefield. Ukraine is not simply hitting steel and concrete, it is dismantling the story Russia tells itself. And in modern warfare that can be as devastating as the loss of any tank battalion. The attack on Rostov's refinery is only one piece of a much broader campaign that Ukraine has quietly, but relentlessly escalated. And when you connect the dots, a striking picture emerges of a nation deliberately targeting the very foundation of Russia's energy empire. Over the past year, Ukrainian drones and missiles have hit refineries hundreds of kilometers inside Russian territory, from the massive Ryazan facility east of Moscow where production fell by half after a precision strike, to Saratov where operations were suspended completely following another attack, to the Novo Shakhtinsk refinery which was forced offline at the beginning of August. Each strike is not just about destruction, it is about demonstrating reach, about proving to Russia and the world that no matter how deep inside their borders an asset lies, it is vulnerable. Perhaps the most audacious move came when Ukrainian forces targeted the Druzhba pipeline, the artery that carries Russian oil to the heart of Europe, including countries like Hungary. Disrupting such a route was not merely a military act, but a geopolitical statement, a reminder to Europe that Ukraine has the ability to shake the foundations of Russia's economic lifeline. To understand how these claims can be verified in real time, one must look at the revolution of open-source intelligence, where NASA's satellites detect heat signatures of fires, where independent analysts overlay those coordinates with videos posted on Telegram, and where within hours, the truth of an event can be reconstructed by anyone with an internet connection. In this environment, the Kremlin cannot hide behind declarations, because every denial is countered by a satellite image, every boast of success dismantled by footage of burning storage tanks. This erosion of narrative control is itself a battlefield, and Ukraine has mastered it by turning every strike into a dual weapon, one that destroys infrastructure and one that destroys credibility. Yet what makes this campaign even more striking is the technology powering it. Ukrainian drones are no longer mere remote-controlled aircraft. They are semi-autonomous machines equipped with computer vision and artificial intelligence that allow them to navigate with deadly accuracy, even when GPS is jammed and communications are cut. These are weapons born from necessity, designed to outmaneuver Russia's jamming systems and exploit the gaps of their defenses. And as if that was not enough, Ukraine has unveiled the Flamingo cruise missile, a weapon with a range of over 3,000 kilometers and a warhead more than 10 times the payload of a typical attack drone. Despite its almost playful name born from the pink hue of its first prototypes, the Flamingo represents a leap in destructive capability, capable of striking Moscow, St. Petersburg, or any strategic site deep inside Russia with precision. When paired with swarms of drones, this missile signals a new chapter in modern warfare, where asymmetric innovation can neutralize even the most expensive air defense systems. For Russia, the implications are grim, because no amount of declarations or censorship can stop the combination of physical destruction and informational exposure that Ukraine has now mastered. And the longer this continues, the more the world will see not a superpower in control, but a state struggling to defend itself on every front. The cumulative effect of these strikes is reshaping not just the battlefield, but the perception of the war itself, because Ukraine has achieved in months what years of Western sanctions could not, directly forcing Russia's economy to feel the heat of war through empty pumps and record fuel prices. At the beginning of this year, analysts estimated that up to 14% of Russia's refining capacity had been disabled, a figure equivalent to shutting down every refinery in Texas overnight, a blow that reverberates from Moscow's treasury to the wallets of ordinary drivers. The Kremlin has scrambled to impose temporary bans on gasoline exports to stabilize domestic markets, yet the lines at fuel stations and the unprecedented rise in prices tell the real story, one where the supposed energy superpower finds itself starved of its own lifeblood. For Russian commanders, the choices grow harsher with every strike. Either strip air defense systems from the front lines to shield critical infrastructure, or accept the reality that strategic assets will continue to burn. Either path weakens Russia, one by exposing soldiers to Ukrainian advances, the other by undermining the very logistics that keep those soldiers supplied. For Russian society, the symbolism is just as devastating. Seeing images of soldiers ordered to use hunting rifles against drones flying at 200 kilometers per hour makes a mockery of the narrative of technological superiority. This surreal contrast between Ukraine's AI-guided drones and cruise missiles and Russia's 19th-century shotguns has become an image that spreads faster than any official denial, a visual shorthand for decline. And in Crimea, where local officials once attempted to dismiss explosions as military drills, the population responded with sarcasm and disbelief, mocking the official line and exposing the widening gulf between the Kremlin's words and the people's perception. In the end, this is not only a war of weapons but a war of stories, and Ukraine has found a way to dominate both. Every successful strike is a military victory, but also an informational triumph, eroding Russia's credibility abroad and corroding its confidence at home. The Novo Shakhtinsk refinery may burn, but what truly smolders is the myth of invulnerability that Russia has tried to project for decades. As the Flamingo missile enters mass production and as drone swarms grow smarter and more numerous, the strategic equation tilts further. Russia is confronted with a dilemma it cannot easily resolve, because to defend everywhere is impossible, and to admit weakness is unthinkable. Ukraine has turned asymmetry into strength, transforming limited resources into precise tools that cut deep into the enemy's core. For the international community, the lesson is equally stark. Wars in the 21st century will not only be fought with divisions of tanks, but with networks of sensors, satellite data, artificial intelligence, and the courage to exploit choke points that can topple giants. And for viewers watching now, the question remains, do you believe that this strategy can change the course of the conflict? Can the careful dismantling of Russia's energy lifeline and the exposure of its fragile defenses truly alter the balance of power? Share your thoughts in the comments. Spread this analysis if it gave you a clearer picture of the war, and subscribe to follow the unfolding chapters of a conflict where every explosion is both a battlefield strike and a revelation of truth.